Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee and I'd like to welcome you to 2023 where I hope to do a series of videos on threading on my import lathe. Now mine is a Precision Matthews lathe, but I suspect threading on a lot of these import lathes is pretty much the same. Mine Change Gears does not have a gearbox. And as I've looked over several videos on YouTube, there's not a whole lot that I've found that deals or that goes into detail on how to change your gears with the various threads per inch or even metric thread pitches. So what I want to do today in this first video is go through in detail how to change or how to use your change gears, and what the legends on your lathe and in the manual may show you. My manual that came with my lathe has one page on threading, and that page is nothing more than the legend of what's on the front of the lathe. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, this is the only thing that's in my manual regarding threading, and what it is a threading and feeding table for the lathe. This is the metric version and this is the inch or imperial version. Mine of course is the imperial or inch version. This section right here is the same thing as what is mounted to the front of the lathe. This of course is the change gear area in here. We'll be taking this off shortly and going through these gears. The top section of this inch or imperial table here deals with the feeds on the lathe. And as you can see, hopefully you can see in that, the gears are labeled Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4, and L. And folks, I've done a little bit of research, and as of the time filming this video, I have not got a definitive answer on what the Z stands for. One person suggested that many of these import lathes are modeled after German machinery, and Z might be the German word for gear. If that's the case, then what does L stand for and what does H stand for down here? But these are the positions, and we're not going to worry a whole lot about what the Z 1, 2, 3, and 4 is. We're going to call the L the lead screw. But this top section right here of this table deals with the feed rate of the carriage into the material or along the Z-axis. This section is for threading in millimeter or metric threading. The various change gears you use, and these are the pitches that you can get. This bottom section right here is threads per inch, threads per inch. I've blown up just that section of the table. These are the threads per inch in imperial, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 11, 13, 12, 14, so forth in this. These are the speeds that you'll select on the front of the lathe, and again we'll get to that in just a moment. Now what I want to do today is show you how to set up for 11 thread per inch. So 11 thread per inch means we're going to use this section right here of the table and this speed. Okay, now I've taken that section that dealt with 11 threads per inch and blacked out everything else. Now this image that you're seeing right now, I'm going to keep in the upper left hand corner, your upper left hand corner of the screen, as I'm doing the change gear operations. And I'll be referring, first off, we're going to be dealing with 11 threads per inch. We'll talk about the top set of gears, the middle set of gears, and the bottom set of gears, the speed, and whether these gears are on the inside or the outside. So as I use the terms outside, inside, top, middle, bottom, and so forth, refer back to this picture that again will be in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Okay, another word about your change gears before we actually get to implementing them. I store mine on a sheet of plywood, with a small piece of plywood I have mounted to the wall. You can store them any way you want to. But let me encourage you, especially if you've got a new lathe, to take a few minutes, 30 minutes, 45 at the most, and clean these gears up and put you some big markings on there as far as the number of teeth per gear. Some of mine are marked very clear that you can find them. Others, very, very faint. And folks, I don't want to take a punch. I've got number punches, but these are cast iron, and I really don't want to take a chance of breaking them by hitting them with a punch and a hammer and a punch. But I use this little brass brush out of my gun cleaning kit, put it in the drill, and just took a minute and cleaned out every one of these holes. If you'll do that, you'll save yourself countless minutes every time you do a gear change. Clean them up good. Now in your gear changing, or at least with the Precision Matthews, there are 2 washers that comes with it. One is a thicker. Whoops, I picked up 2 thick ones. One is a little thin washer, and the other one is considerably thicker. We'll get into the use of those as well when we step over. So clean your gears up. Keep them all together, whether you stack them up in a drawer somewhere or hang them on the wall. Keep them together. Keep all your various bushings, washers, and I even keep a tool close by, the 10mm wrench that's needed. All right, let's turn to the lathe now. Okay, this is the front of my lathe, and as I've said earlier, this is a Precision Matthews PM-1127 VFLB. The 1127, the 11 is the width, the maximum diameter of a piece of work material that you can hold in this lathe. The 27th is the length of travel center to center. VF is variable frequency. This is a 3-phase motor in here that has a VFD on it. Some of the earlier versions of this same model lathe had a DC motor in them. The LB stands for large bore. This is an 1 3/4 bore in this lathe, through the head of this, through the spindle of this lathe. This control switch down here is for the feed direction. My lathe has a feed screw, or a lead screw, and a feed screw. Many of these lathes will only have one screw that serves the same purpose. But on this one, this switch right here determines whether we're in this position, we're turning, so we're using the feed screw down here. Switch it over to this side as the threading indicator. We'll be using the feed screw. This is the speeds, A, B, and C. And again, those are covered up here in the top part of the feed chart. I didn't mention it earlier, but there are several different setups for feeds and speeds. It looks like there's 5 of them. Well, 5 times 3, it's about 18 different, but you'll want to make note of what your lathe is set up for before you ever remove the change gears and start setting it up for threading. Mine uses this top left one, which gives me a feed rate of either 5 thousandths per revolution, 2.5 thousandths per revolution, or 10 thousandths per revolution. Okay, enough talking about this. Let's get to the change gears. All right, let's remove the cover. Now you may note I'm wearing gloves. these plastic disposable gloves or latex gloves because I keep my change gears very, very well oiled. Here are the change gears. This is the motor, of course, down here, the spindle, idler pulley, or idler here just to keep tension on the belt. This is what we're going to be dealing with. And again, keep in mind in the upper left-hand corner of your screen will be that image that I showed you that we'll be using as our guide for which gears to put in place. This section right here, there'll normally be 5 gears, 2, 4, and a 5th one down here. This is called the banjo. On this one, a 6mm will loosen the banjo. And you'll be able to see this better when I get the gears off. But let me give you a word of warning. If you take hold of this, let's say like this, as you're wanting to bend it down, you're going to pinch your fingers. These gears are all tied together, so when I move this banjo around, these gears are going to turn a little bit. And if you've got a finger or a glove or anything up near where these gears mesh, or even where they overlap each other, you're going to pinch yourself. Should have grabbed it a little better than that, but grab it on a single gear when you loosen it and just bring it out just enough that you can get to the back edge of the banjo. Now there's a groove in this back edge that a nut's go in. And again, I'll show you those when we get these gears off. You'll probably need something like a flat screwdriver to remove these retainers. And here's where you'll need that 10mm wrench. Now before you take these off, if you don't know which part of your table shows the gears for the standard setup, make a note of these various gears, take a picture of them, make a note of the teeth and so forth. All right, here's this nut that's in the back here. We'll need that. And this one has the thin washer on the top. Here's one of the reasons, again, you want to take time to clean those out. See, I can push that out without having to take a punch to it or anything like that. So I'm going to set this off to the side. This happens to be with this one a 75 tooth. On the inside, look up here at your picture and see what I'm talking about. This is the top and the 75 is the inside. This 30 tooth, I believe it is, yeah, there's the marking, is the top outside. So we'll set this one to the side. Again, there's a nut that I just slid up and down this trough back here. This one has the flat washer. And I believe that's a 25 tooth on the middle inside and a 80 tooth on the middle outside. Inside being against the lathe toward the headstock. So I'll take that stud, set it up there, set this to the side. On the bottom down here, that takes a 5mm. That's just a 5mm screw and a little split washer as a retainer. Now I like to look for, this is keyed. I like to turn it so that that keys up and it doesn't fall down in the drink down here. But this little fella is what the table calls an H. Now the only thing I can come up with is maybe that stands for placeholder. meaning this doesn't mesh with another gear anywhere, it just holds that position. And then this is an 80 tooth on the bottom inside. So here's what our banjo looks like. And that 6mm screw down here that I was loosening, this is clamped on the end, or clamped on the feed gears. See how that's got a split in it right there? And that just clamps down to hold it in position. So I've got access here where I can reach back in this little trough. I'll try to insert a picture right here to show you what the back side of this looks like. Now let's look at our picture that's in your upper left. We need to start at the bottom down here. And it tells us for 11 threads per inch, we need a holder on the bottom inside, or an H. So I'll put that on the bottom inside. Bottom outside gets a 55 tooth. I'll go to my stash of gears over here on the wall. I got the 55 tooth, put that in and keyed, and take this washer, or take this 5mm that has a split washer on it. I say 5mm, it's a 5mm socket head on it. Now we're ready for the middle position. The middle inside says it takes a 60. So I'll come back over here to the wall and get my 60 tooth gear. Now we're going to need a bushing to go in that. I could take one of the bushings out of these. I have some extra ones. I honestly don't remember if the extra ones came with the lathe, or I know Precision Matthews sent me some extra ones at some point in time. But if you don't have extras, you can use the ones that was in there. And this is the prime example of where you need to have cleaned these gears out. You don't want to have to take time here to go press that in or punch that in. And again, these are cast iron. You want them so you can handle them pretty easy. All right, so the middle inside gets a 60 tooth. The outside says it's a 30 tooth. Now 30 is one of the ones that was in the standard stack. I believe it was in the top stack. Again, I don't want to have to take time to punch that out, so I've cleaned up the inside of these bores. So I'll take that 30 off of that one and add it to the 60 stack. All right, I had to tap that one on just a little bit. Probably need to clean that one just a little more. But we got 60 that will go on the inside and 30 on the outside. Now here's where that thin washer or thick washer comes into play. This 60 tooth gear is going to go behind this 55 tooth. If I use that thick washer back there, there's a good chance that the inside of this is going to rub against that. So I don't want that. I'm going to use the thin washer. I'll take one of the studs, push it through, put the thin washer on, hold this up here, take one of our nuts, go to the back side. Now we want to move this down to something's got to mesh with something else. All right, so this 30 tooth is going to mesh with that 55 tooth. If you look in that upper left hand corner, you'll see a vertical line between the 55 down here and the 30. You'll also see a vertical line between the 60 back here and the 80 that'll go on the top. That's just indicating to you what the drivetrain actually is. So down here, I don't want to push that tight into there. I'm going to leave about, I don't know, a rule of thumb is when you're getting used to that, you can always put a piece of paper in there, in between, and use that as your gear spacing. Now, for the top section up here, we see the top inside says an 80, and then the outside has an H, which again is a filler. Now, what do you use for fillers? Well, I don't want to muddy up the issue, but I actually made myself some fillers. But you probably don't have that, so the best thing you can use for a filler is another gear. This is the 20-tooth one, so let me get an 80 right here. So I've got an 80, and I'll put my bushing in, and then I'm going to take another gear that's small enough so it will not interfere with anything else, and place that as my filler. Now I'll take the stud, run it through that. The only washer we've got left is the thick one, which is perfectly fine. That means it's going to set this 80-tooth off just a little bit, but there's still plenty of room for it to mesh. I'll put the nut back here. All right, let's double check what we've got. Again, refer to your picture in the upper left hand. The top inside is an 80 gear. Outside is a placeholder. It doesn't mesh with anything else. It's just going to fill up this space where a gear would be. We follow our vertical line. This 80 meshes with a 60 tooth in the middle inside position. The middle outside has a 30 tooth that meshes with the 55 on the outside that has a holder on the inside. Now let's put our little retainers in. Sometimes these retainers, you'll need to put them in the, you may need to put them in the vise and tighten them back down a little bit. They'll get sprung. In my case, this one's a little bit tight, and that one up there was a little bit loose. But we have those retainers. You see what this holder is for right up here now? With that retainer in, this gear cannot come out. It'll stay meshed down here. We'll take our 6mm, roll that up again being careful. You see how these gears turn when I move this? Well, if you got your finger in there or in there, it's going to pinch it. Now you want to be sure that meshes up pretty good, or real good up here at the top. Last thing you want is for this to jump out of gear while you're cutting threads. So hold that up in place and tighten that 6mm. Now if you're a safety Nazi, close your eyes. Most of you will have to put your cover back on the outside before you can start it up. I'm not going to show you how I did it, but I did bypass that safety switch that's on the cover, so I can start it now. Let me plug the lathe back in. It was unplugged while we were doing that. All right, I'm going to turn it on now. Just quickly bumping the switch. Be sure I don't have any kind of anything binding. Now I'm going to put a little oil in. Again, this is why I use gloves, because I keep these gears good and oiled. All right, we got no binding. Everything seems to be meshing fine. So let's put our cover back on. Okay, everybody probably does it different, but I keep a little notebook of various threading information. As a matter of fact, even got pictures that show what the compound should look like for external and internal threading, which we'll get into in subsequent videos. But in that notebook, I keep a checklist of things I need to do to set up for threading, because threading is not something I do every day. And there's been several times where I missed a step and messed up a piece of material because I was not set up properly. But the first thing on my checklist is the proper change gears installed. And pretty sure we just got the proper ones installed for 11 threads per inch in the previous little bit. Next thing we need to do is select the speed. If you see in your upper left hand corner up there, we see the speed says we need the B position. So we move this to the B position. Next on my checklist is threading versus turning. Remember earlier I pointed out that this was to control whether we're using the feed screw or the lead screw. We want the lead screw. This is 8 thread per inch imperial lead screw. So we need to flip that over to that position. So select threading versus turning, or speed, or feeding versus leading. Now we need to make a test pass. And you say, well, wait a minute, Lee, we've not set up the compound, we've not set up the cross slide, we've not done any of squaring the tool up to the workpiece. You don't have to do that. To make your test pass, all you're testing is the feed, that we're properly feeding correctly. I've got a piece of dummy work material here. As a matter of fact, this is actually a piece of tubing. Got some dicom on there. I'm going to put this in there and we're going to check to be sure we're set up in the gearbox here for 11 threads per inch. Now I'm going to get my threading tool, because I do want, I guess I could use a turning tool for that, but I want to be sure I've got the same point. I'm testing with the same point that I'm going to be cutting threads with. All right, I'm going to turn the RPM down reasonably slow, and I'm going to advance that in to where it just touches. Now I'm going to pull out here. Now in the subsequent videos over the next several weeks, I'm going to go into actual threading. Today's video was all about the change gears. But one of the things that we'll have to do with threading is engaging the half nuts on our threading, on one of the numbers on our threading dial, which again, I'll get into in full detail in the coming videos. All right, I'm engaged. I'm disengaged, back off. That tubing might not have been the best thing in the world to use for a test piece, because it's not entirely round. But what I have is my thread gauge here with 11 threads per inch. And hopefully you can see there that that matches up exactly 11 threads per inch. Now to continue on cutting our threads, we would be sure we got the compound at the correct angle to the workpiece. We've got the cross slide in the correct position. We've got everything set up. We've got our dials in the proper starting position. Then we will cut our thread. After we cut our thread, we need to go back to the change gears and put our standard feed gears back in place. Okay, for the purpose of this video, we finished cutting our threads. So let's take the cover back off. What we want to do is set this back up for regular turning, facing, drilling, whatever other operation we might do on the lathe. Okay, if you remember from our table that we found in the manual and also on the front of the lathe, this top section up here deals with the feed rate. Middle section was the metric threading. The bottom is what we just went through on the change gears for the imperial threading. We want to go back to where we started. And this top left one is what we determined ours was before we removed any of the change gears. So we're going to set back up to that. The picture that you see in your upper left hand corner of your screen now is in fact that top left section of the table. So let's take our 6mm again, loosen it up, bring it out just enough that we can get to the back of our banjo. Remove the retainers. Okay, our picture up here says that we need, on the bottom, we need an 80 on the inside and a placeholder on the outside. Next it says we need a 25 on the inside and an 80 on the outside. Now here's where we get into our thin washer and thick washer again. If this sets up too close to the banjo, the outside of this is going to rub with the inside of that. So we want the thick washer. Put our stud through the thick washer, and that thick washer will keep this wheel set just off just a little bit, just a few thousandths, enough to clear this gear. And it's this inside gear here that's meshing with the inside gear there. If you see on your chart, you see that vertical line running from the 80 to the 25. So you just have to kind of feel. Our top section says 75 on the inside and 30 on the outside. So we have 75 and the 30. Put our stud in, and this time it's the thin washer is what's left. And the thin is indeed what we need. We need this gear set back far enough so that it's not rubbing the gear that's in front of it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this little lesson or session on change gears on an import lathe. Hope it cleared up any confusion you might have had about it. Please come back for next week's video. What we're going to do is take that change gear setup and we're going to turn this piece of 5/8 inch stock right here. We're going to turn threads on it, cut threads on it to match this 5/8 11 nut. Take care, and I'll see you on that video.